Colombia's head of state, Gustavo Petro, announced he will resume dialogues with striking minors in Antioquia. France's Senate approved the reform to the country's pension system in the context of the ongoing massive demonstrations nationwide. And the Iranian president, Ebrahim Raisi, received his Belarusian counterpart, Alexander Lukashenko, in Tehran to enhance bilateral relations. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. Colombia's head of state, Gustavo Petro, presided over a Security Council on Sunday to evaluate actions in response to the mining strike in the northwest of the country, which has been going on for more than 10 days and affects some 250,000 people. From the town of Montelíbano, Petro stated that he will resume dialogue with the miners in the department of Antioquia once the violence gives way and the food shortages are overcome. He also pointed out that if the Gulf Clan, an irregular armed group, is behind the protests, as some versions indicate, this will hinder any attempt for peace. In this context, he called on the miners' leaders to meet with him at the Nariño Palace to advance in the constructive dialogues. On Sunday, Nicaragua and the Vatican suspended diplomatic relations, according to a press release from the Chancellery of that Central American nation. The statement stressed that in view of the information that has been spread by the sources apparently linked to the Catholic Church, the Government of Reconciliation and National Unity of our Nicaragua, blessed and forever free, specifies that between the Vatican State and the Republic of Nicaragua, a suspension of diplomatic relations has been proposed. The note points out that the media linked to the coup terrorism that attacked and assassinated the Nicaraguan people in April 2018 were the ones who disseminated that distorted news that in these times is known as fake news. The suspension of relations comes after last Friday Pope Francis, in an interview with an Argentine media outlet, lashed out against the Sandinista government and President Daniel Ortega. Now we move on to other topics. The government of Peru announced relief measures for the agricultural sector following crop losses caused by Cyclone Yaku. The Ministry of Agrarian Development and Irrigation, MIDAGRI, in coordination with the regional governments, activated the catastrophic agrarian insurance, considering that this sector was one of the most affected by this phenomenon. Officials assured that this insurance consists of a compensation of 800 soles, equivalent to $211 per hectare for the farmers affected by the rains and the floods in the country. Likewise, representatives of the Ministry of Agrarian Development assured that they are in the process of acquiring the necessary equipment after the rains. The announcement comes after the President-designate Dina Boluarte assured that her administration does not have the resources to face the climatic crisis the country is going through. In the United States, another round of storms is headed for flood-ravaged California, where residents are still dealing with blocked roads, overflowing rivers, flooded neighborhoods, and a flood bank breach that forced the evacuation of hundreds of people. The Weather Forecasting Service indicated the arrival of a new atmospheric river on Monday, threatening heavy rain and even more flooding in central and northern California. About 15 million people remain under flood warnings in California and Nevada as the storm approaches. The Weather Prediction Center said that Monday night, rain will impact increasingly sensitive portions of central California that were hit hard by rainfall on Friday and early Saturday. As a result, it will not be long once heavy, steady rain begins for flooding impacts to resume. On Saturday night, Hurricane Freddie entered Mozambique for the second time, lashing the South African country with heavy rains and affecting transport and telecommunication services. With sustained winds of 155 kilometers per hour at sea and gusts of 220 kilometers. The agency forecasts that Freddie is to move further inland over the weekend, bringing heavy rains to Mozambique and southern Malawi, with possible rainfall in Zimbabwe and Zambia. They also noted that hurricane is unlikely to weaken while inland in the next week, as there is a good chance that it will return to sea. According to authorities in several areas of the country, the population has reported blackouts and the loss of telecommunication lines in several regions of the country. Let's take a short break. But first, remember you can follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. On late Saturday, the French Senate voted to approve the deeply unpopular reform to the country's pension system. Senators passed the reforms by 195 votes to 112, bringing the package another step closer to becoming law. In the next few days, a committee will agree a final draft, which will then be submitted to both the Senate and the National Assembly for a final vote. Unions, which have fiercely opposed the measures, still hoped on Saturday to force Macron to back down, though the day's protests against the reform were far smaller than some previous ones. Tensions flared in the evening, with Paris police saying they had made 32 arrests after some protesters threw objects at security forces, with rubbish bins burned and windows broken. This week, Macron twice turned down urgent calls by unions to meet with him in a last-ditch attempt to get him to change his mind. In Greece, at least 15,000 people protested on Sunday against the conservative government, which they blamed for the causes of a recent train accident with a death toll of 57. According to the capital's television, the demonstrations caused the closure of several streets in the capital, while in Thessaloniki, the second most important city in the country, similar scenes of blockades were repeated by thousands of workers and students. The demonstrators demand the resignation of the team of Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis, who this week publicly acknowledged the responsibility of the executive. The Ministry of Finance recently announced a pension of 15,000 euros per month for the relatives of the fatal victims. For next Thursday, a 24-hour general strike is planned, called by the trade union centers GSEE and ADERI, which will demand the search for the real culprits of the accident.
It was a train track of death. They knew about it and didn't do anything. They didn't take any measures and sent 57 people to their death. At some point, we have to understand, to comprehend that we can't live in a country that is indifferent towards the life of its citizens.
Thousands of people in the Czech Republic rallied in Prague to protest high inflation and to demand an end to the country's military support for Ukraine. A new political group, PRO, organized the rally in Prague's Wenceslas Square as anti-poverty rally. As participants called for the resignation of the coalition government, a party leader, Jindřich Rašil, said they wanted a government that cares first and foremost about the interests of the Czech citizens. His group blames the European Union for rising energy prices. Ukraine was a key issue at Saturday's rally, where the crowd called for a peaceful solution to the war. The Czech Republic has staunchly reported the Kiev government since the beginning of the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. The country has provided weapons to the Ukrainian army and has taken in 500,000 refugees. Also, meanwhile, in Spain, more than 2,000 people took to the streets of the northern city of Bilbao as part of a march in support of Russia. Demonstrators marched to the Bilbao mayoral building, holding flags of Russia and the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics. Protesters underlined that they are against NATO strategy, against military support for Kiev, and against the increase of EU countries' military budgets. They also called for the redistribution of these resources for social spending and the support for the population due to rising prices for electricity, basic products and services. Similar rallies were also witnessed in other European countries such as Germany, France, Belgium and the UK. On Saturday, thousands of Israelis gathered in Tel Aviv to protest judicial reforms they fear will erode democracy in the country. The uproar over Netanyahu's legal overhaul has plunged Israel into one of its worst domestic crises. Beyond the protests, opposition has surged from across society, with businesses, leaders and legal officials speaking out against what they say will be the ruinous effects of the plan. The rift has not spared Israel's military, which is seeing unprecedented opposition from within its own ranks. Hundreds of Israeli women's rights activists dressed as characters in the popular television series The Handmaid's Tale joined the rallies. And the Pope Francis called for international solidarity towards the migrant population during the Angelus on Sunday, 10 years after the beginning of his administration at the head of the Catholic Church. This Sunday, Pope Francis gave his address during the prayer of the Angelus on this third Sunday of Lent with the faithful and pilgrims who gathered at noon local time in St. Peter's Square. During his address, Pope Francis offered a prayer in reference to fraternity and to the thousands of migrants who tried to cross the Mediterranean coast towards Europe. The Supreme Pontiff once again called for greater international solidarity towards the migrant population, stressing the need to welcome those in need. Catholic faithful from various countries of the world visit the Vatican to commemorate this Monday, March 13th, the 10th anniversary of the papacy of Francis, the first Latin American at the head of the office.
Francesco, the name is already related to a program. We know the story of Saint Francis of Assisi, and he identified himself very much in this dimension, and because of this he got much closer to the people, making us feel closer to him.
He is a pope for this time. He managed to grasp today's needs and to propose them to the whole universal church, and this is a beautiful intuition that he had, enlightened by the Holy Spirit. And now he's giving the church a push forward for the time to come. He is showing good for the future.
And the Assembly of the Italian Democratic Party proclaimed on Sunday Ellie Schlein as the new secretary of the party, which makes her the first woman to lead this progressive formation. During her first speech, Schlein assured that from Monday she will work to win the elections and snatch the power from the right-wing Giorgia Meloni. The political leader also called on the party members to generate spaces for discussion about the future of the nation. The new leader of the Democratic Party is considered the great promise to rescue the Democratic Party from its previous electoral defeats, and after her victory in the primaries on February 27th, to give a left turn to the national government. TeleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StarSat. Dial 461 and enjoy our Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi received his Belarusian counterpart Alexander Lukashenko in Tehran to enhance bilateral relations. After the welcoming ceremony held with full honors, the statements set in small and large format with the participation of the two delegations and discussed the materialization of projects in the fields of industry, agriculture, transportation and logistics. At the end, the leaders signed a roadmap for comprehensive cooperation between the two countries for the period 2023 to 2026, which includes mutual commitments in multiple sectors. Meanwhile, according to Belarus state agency Belta, the Belarusian president will also meet with the country's first vice president, Mohammad Mojber, the head of the Islamic Consultative Assembly, Mohammad Bakir Khalifab, and the supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei. On Sunday, 3 military personnel were wounded and material losses were reported after Israeli missiles hit Tartus and Hama. According to the Syrian Arab news agency, a military source reported that around 7:15 a.m. local time on Sunday, March 12th, the Israeli carried out an air attack with volleys of missiles fired from airspace of northern Lebanon. The air defenses intercepted some of the missiles, while the impact of the remaining ones caused material losses and injuries to 3 soldiers, detailed the state agency. In view of the repeated attacks, Damascus urged the Security Council of the United Nations organization to issue a public condemnation of the constant aggressive Israeli actions that directly threaten regional and international peace and security. On Sunday, a United Nations Security Council delegation wrapped up a 3-day visit to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, with ambassadors stressing a political solution to end the raging M23 rebel conflict. The M23 has these swaths of territory in the northern Kivu province and are threatening to cut off all road links to Goma, a city of more than 1 million people on the Rwandan border. According to the UN, fighting between Congolese forces and the M23 has displaced over 800,000 people. The UN team met Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi. In Goma, they had talks with local officials, civil leaders, and toured a displaced persons camp. The Security Council visit came after the collapse of an Angola-mediated ceasefire, which was due to take effect on Tuesday. Several previous peace initiatives have also failed. The DRC government accuses Rwanda of backing the M23. Kigali denies the charge.
We will continue our advocacy in New York to ensure that aid reaches those in need. Our visit also comes as the country, the DRC, moves towards elections at the end of this year. We have encouraged all political actors to continue to work towards peaceful, transparent, inclusive, and credible processes.
And a preliminary report by South Africa's Anticorruption agency cleared President Cyril Ramaphosa from any responsibility in the cover-up scandal in which he was involved. The public protector notified the parties concerned of the preliminary details of its investigation, while Ramaphosa's spokesperson Vincent Mangwenya assured that the president had received the report and stressed that his client will not be involved in any crime. According to the document, the head of the Police Protection Unit acted inappropriately by investigating the case on his own without notifying the police after Ramaphosa's complaint. The cover-up scandal against the president broke out in June 2022 after he admitted to stealing $500,000 in cash from a ranch he owned. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.